Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to this Reuters Events podcast. I'm very happy to welcome two individuals today to talk on this show. Firstly, Marcelo Regen, who is a Vice President, Brand Innovation, Chief Customer Officer at Allstate, and also James Swayze, a Senior Executive at CoreLogic. Gentlemen, welcome to today's session. Thank you again for joining. Before we kick things off, just to elaborate slightly on the introductions, can I ask you both just to give me 60 seconds or so on what you're focusing on and how your company's interacting with the market. James, if we go to you first.
Sure, Graham. CoreLogic is the world's largest provider of property information. So we provide software and data into the real estate and insurance, property insurance industries to support the housing market. Currently, 85% of the multiple listing service and real estate agents are on our platforms, which form the system of record for the real estate industry in Canada and the United States. And CoreLogic's been investing a great deal in the insurance capabilities, again, more software and data analytics capabilities to serve insurance companies, to try and marry the data that we have from real estate to move through the underwriting process and ultimately into claims. So it's trying to tighten up an ecosystem surrounding housing and repurpose data that's already been collected from real estate into insurance.
Good stuff. And Marcelo, you're all things customer in terms of championing that side of things. What have you been up to in terms of your recent job developments? What are you focusing on at the moment at Allstate?
Well, thank you. Thank you first for having me here. Pleasure to be here with you. And yeah, absolutely. So I am the Chief Customer Officer for Allstate Canada. And we had been in the marketplace for many years, and one of the things that we always strive to do is to drive value. We want dollar for dollar to make sure that consumers are getting value, and one of the critical aspects of our distribution system is to be present in the communities we do business, and making sure that we continue to be accessible, present, and flexible, as the current pandemic has certainly altered our lives. Lately, as a Chief Customer Officer, and I also have innovation in my portfolio for Allstate brand, it has kept us super busy on a number of fronts, and not only in terms of ensuring that our employees were safe and secure and able to continue to work. Working from home was a big thing that all of us were busy with, but also making sure that we continue to be there for our consumers, and being able to interact with them on their terms. Always putting safety and security of both employees and consumers at the forefront, but also understanding that we need to be there and also provide flexible options, because consumers, we're going through some tough times too. So premium relief, changing coverages, and just making sure that during this pandemic and these changes operationally, we were sensitive to the fact that our consumers really needed us to be there, and we needed to double down on the efforts to make those flexible changes real and available for them. So I would say that kept us super busy.
Yeah. So it sounds like customer as always is a core focus, and you're trying to keep close to the customer, and it's been a tough year for everybody, just socially, in terms of the financial world, but, in terms of the communities that we're serving, everything's been affected by the virus. What I'd like to focus on first, so of course, there has been a lot of talk in the last 2 or 3 months about the insurance community and how innovation perhaps has been fast-tracked, or certain projects have come to the fore quicker than they would have done normally, whether that's digital transformation, whether it's other processes that allow the insurance community to be as close as possible to their customer. James, if I can start with you, how have you seen the insurance community reaction in 2020 in terms of driving innovation forwards? When you've had contact with the insurance carriers and their community, have you noticed a shift in terms of their priorities or how they are prioritizing innovation?
Well, yes, in short, I have. And the way I would describe it is that they are more open to embracing third-party vendors. And I speak from firsthand knowledge, being in a company that serves the insurance industry with software, data, and consulting. I would say historically, insurance companies have been more protective of their process and their capabilities, and sort of would let in the third-party vendors as needed. And now, with COVID having really shone a spotlight on some of the process weaknesses in their business, they are more open to outside-in thinking. They are more open to recommendations from others, and have kind of accepted that maybe they don't know everything, and not picking on insurance companies in that regard. It's pretty common for a lot of businesses. It just was a bit of an eye-opener. So they're seeking out partners that can help them transform, and not partners that they want to get married to and reliant upon, but partners that can help them sunset some of their old technology stack or process and become more self-reliant and prepared for the changes that we can see coming like a freight train. Right. So it's been very positive, refreshing, and more of a partnership mentality.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I wonder what you think on that, Marcelo, when we talk about innovation that comes from your internal team and a huge incumbent like Allstate Canada. Of course, you have a lot of expertise in-house, you have legacy, you have a past and a track record to look back on to guide you. But have you been working with third parties in 2020, perhaps more so than before? Or how does your relationship in Allstate Canada work in terms of internal innovation versus bringing in expertise when there is a gap?
I would say I agree first and foremost with what James described. I think there's fundamentally the pandemic has maybe accelerated some changes or some journeys on the digital transformation and data and analytics, partially because some companies were already embarked there, but also it accelerated because it brought something that was always important into the important and urgent quadrant. And that urgency came also from the realization that consumers also were forced to shift some of their paradigms and some of their behaviors. And some consumers who might have not embraced some digital interactions and some digital channels found that they had no choice and that it wasn't that bad. and in some aspects, it was better for some things. So I would go back to the fact that consumers are not comparing insurance companies with other insurance companies. They are comparing their experience with any other provider that they have. And as such, insurance providers need to make sure that we provide table stakes or best-in-class capabilities, depending on where you want to position yourself in terms of how you bring value. Do you want to be lowest price provider? Do you want to over-index in advice? That's up to each company to determine how you go to market. But regardless of that, there's a minimum level of capability that you need to have on the digital space, the digital interaction, the contact center, and your local presence. And again, as I mentioned in other opportunities, instead of seeing that as siloed channels of interactions, they became flipped in terms of capabilities that you need to be able to offer to different degrees, and different consumers, depending on their preferences, will choose differently. So just to round up the answer, I have seen definitely the need to accelerate the going from siloed transactional data linked to the functions of pricing, underwriting, settling claims, to consolidating that so it's accessible to drive insights, and aggregating and augmenting that with third-party data to make even smarter decisions and be more seamless when it comes to omni-channel or multi-channel interactions across the board.
Right. Just staying with you for a moment, Marcelo, it's interesting you talk about customer expectations changing and insurers being challenged by experience generally, whether that's outside of insurance, etc. Some would say that in the Canadian market for a long time, the insurers have gone on their reputation, their standing in the industry. People go to an insurer because they know them, and it's its own siloed product and experience. But now there's other stuff there. How quickly or how do you perceive the Canadian market moving forwards in terms of providing those really advanced customer experiences that we might see perhaps in other parts of the world or within other industries? How quickly is the Canadian insurance experience moving?
I think there are some factors that have shaped the industry over the years, and regulatory frameworks are without a doubt a big portion of the mix. And there have been very good movements towards principle-based regulatory frameworks, so that we're really pleased to see that move towards something that is more consistent with driving innovation. And you can see that in terms of user-based insurance and how jurisdictions are embracing that more and more. And that naturally has a linkage to not only innovation, but also digital interactions that open the door for other type of things. So user-based insurance is not just getting data to rate a policy, but also you can engage in a different way, and you can provide advice on how to become a better driver, how to save fuel. I'm just making very concrete, very simple examples of some interactions. I believe that as companies continue to take advantage of those improvements in the regulatory framework, and they bring to market solutions related to leveraging that. And that it doesn't only apply to to auto, but also homeowner and other aspects of the ecosystem, because we are realizing that consumers have needs beyond just the niche or the core. So understanding how can you fulfill those needs in a consistent way. And again, each carrier will determine where they position in the range or scale. But without a doubt, I see, going back to what I said before, it's no longer an option to be at least table stakes in all the different types of interactions that consumers are now experiencing with other providers. And they are comparing us to the best e-marketing or e-commerce provider out there when it comes to getting other stuff, or their bank, or their telecommunications provider. So I think we need to wake up to really embrace that. And I think that's happening. That's happening. Yeah. And again, it goes back to what problem or what friction the consumer is experiencing, and that should be the focus of our efforts. Remove frictions and bring solutions to consumers. If we do that, I think we're going to be successful.
Yeah. James, did you have any comments off the back of that? There's quite a lot there.
Yeah, no, I'm in complete agreement with Marcelo in terms of the consumer and their, they're not comparing Allstate to Chubb. They're comparing Allstate to Google, right? They're comparing their experience with their insurance company to every experience they have on their handheld device, whether it's banking, benefits, cable, you name it. And if you look back, I would say 5 years ago, you would probably put banking and insurance in the same category as somewhat laggards when it comes to digital adoption. But I would say the banks have kind of lapped the insurance companies. They've done a great deal of tremendous work in engaging their policyholders and the customers, rather. Because I think in the insurance example, and in any business really, what we've learned irrevocably over the pandemic is that the customer wants to be engaged. The more engagement they have in the process, the more they buy into the process, the more sense of control they have, and they believe that they're improving the outcome for their own benefit because they're having a firsthand interaction. And so, I think insurance companies over the pandemic were forced to allow the policyholder in like they had never done before, allowing them to collect data, allowing them to get more personally involved. And what they discovered very quickly was they like this and they want it. And so that's never going to change. It's there's no turning back at that point. And I think the consumer will be driving more and more of the change going forward as a result of that.
Yeah, totally. And I think something that's very strongly linked to customer engagement and ultimately the customer experience is the power that we possess on the flip side in terms of the data and analytics that we are able to leverage. I wonder, from your point of view, James, how as a community are we actually using data and analytics so that we can achieve the end goal, which is having engaged consumers that are interacting with an insurance product that they're confident in, and also it's an insurance experience which matches their lifestyle and their needs because we know a lot about them. So what's your perspective on how we're really using data and analytics at the moment?
I think again, going back to what's changed in the last 9 months is insurance companies having to become more trustworthy of their customers, trustworthy of partner companies, third-party vendors, and trusting of the data as well. The need with property insurance, which is my area of focus, for that ground truth is not as critical as it once was. The belief that only ground truth will thwart fraudulent behavior is also not the case. You have capabilities and tool sets that are baked into your handheld device that can geocode locations and so forth to prevent somebody from fraudulently sending pictures of something that isn't related to their home to describe a loss. And I think the credibility of the data and the security wrapped around the number of tool sets is just constantly improving iteratively, which is giving ever more confidence to the insurance industry. And a lot of the claims that were handled, for example, over the last 9 months were done remotely. And I think that many insurance companies found that by engaging the consumer and allowing them to be more involved in the process, they were being quite truthful. And the more involved they were, the more truthful they were. And it was a benefit to everyone. So the industry constantly rely more on the data, and the data is becoming more refined, more accurate. And like I said at the outset when I described CoreLogic, we source data from the real estate industry, and that has a natural place in the insurance world. And so it just provides more credibility going forward and easier to.
Yeah, makes sense. Good. Marcelo, what's your relationship like with data at the moment? Is it a good relationship? Are you using it? How are you using it at Allstate Canada? What's most exciting about the way that you're wielding data at the moment?
Definitely. We are, for 60 years, we collected 60 plus years. We collected data points. We're data rich. And I would say we're in a journey to become insights rich. There's a big difference between being data rich and being insights rich. And even though we had been extremely disciplined over the years to leverage the data, again, for those specific transactional aspects of rating, underwriting, settling claims, and so forth, the journey we embarked a few years ago, like many other carriers, is how can we turn those transactional style of data points into insights, because we need to get to know our consumers much, much more better. We need to be able to customize what we offer to them based on their preferences. And this is not to be, there's a history of being product-centric. And everybody talks about being customer-centric, but it's hard to transition from when you organized all your systems, all your working groups, even your structure to be what's the profitability and the growth of a line of business, to say, how do I maximize the lifetime value of this relationship with a consumer or with a center of influence? That is a fundamental change, but I think it's the right change. And for that, data and augmented data and thinking about data and investing in a new capability for everyone in the organization, which is leading with analytics, is key. So I think what also is changing is not only the nature of the data or how we are augmenting the data, but also the investment we're making in holding our people capable of working with that data and making decisions. Leading with analytics implies defining the problem you're trying to solve. If you have 5 minutes, spend 4 trying to define the problem that you're trying to solve before you jump into a solution. And in changing that, and again, holding people capable first and then accountable, I think it's critical to be able to leverage that data, turn it into insights, and so you focus on solving the right problem. So I would say our relationship with data is really good. We're making significant investments in upping the game when it comes to leading with analytics, defining the proper problem, the business problem we want to solve, and then experimenting and just being very disciplined in the way we execute, which again is critical to be agile, because that's another key learning. You need to be able and be nimble and more flexible. And these are all buzzwords, but it's real, and it takes a lot of preparation. You need to deal with the important. So you minimize the urgencies, you minimize the fires by dealing with the important that typically is hard to push back when you have a lot of urgency. So
Sure.
I would say that's how we're thinking about it.
Great. I like that phrase, becoming insight rich. I think that's really critical, isn't it? That's the next step, or at least an intermediary step towards the end goal. So we've talked a lot about 2020, how the industry has perhaps sharpened its focus. There's been no great revolution. It's more of perhaps a innovation. There's been a move towards more innovation. There's been more collaboration potentially. But when we return to work in January 2021, could I ask both of you, and perhaps James, this might be a two-part for you, but what is the number one priority with everything that's happened in 2020? What's really critical? Firstly, Marcelo, from the point of view as an incumbent insurer, a leader in the Canadian market, what is Allstate Canada's number one focus from your job function come January 2021?
I might answer your question with more than one thing, because we are trying to do things concurrently and that are at the top, and not that I'm trying to cheat, but I believe that is, how do we continue to deliver value? And as I said, continue to accelerate the data and analytics journey. That's without a doubt a number one priority. And there are a number of sub elements there. Continuing to deliver value for customers with customized solutions during the pandemic and post-pandemic, given some things that we believe will be permanent changes, and leveraging some of the opportunities again, as some of the regulatory frameworks are opening up some of the possibilities to bring more flexible and more innovative solutions. And I would say the third is reimagining the workplace. That is huge. How do we enable our staff to be capable again of embracing what's changed and some of the things that are changing forever in the way consumers will engage with us, how we will leverage the data, and how we will leverage some of the tools to be there for our customers and to be there for our employees. Because let's not forget that humans are a big part of doing what we do and delivering the value and keeping up the promise that we make of keeping people in good hands. So we need to make sure that the organization and as leaders, we're there for our people so they can go through this process, which is huge, And the honeymoon of the work from home might be getting to an end because people are now seeing that many things will be a permanent change, and the old norm will not be the new norm, even after the vaccine.
Great. And James, from your point of view, I think it's perhaps two-part. What do you see as the next step for the insurance carrier community? In other words, how would you like to see them progress? If you could click your fingers and allow them to improve in a certain area, what would it be? And secondly, how does that marry up with what CoreLogic are aiming to achieve and how you're interacting with that community?
Sure. I would say if there's one thing that is going to change, it is that the insurance industry has, I think, now finally realized that it has to upgrade their own tech capabilities, embracing the fact that they need to rebuild. So many insurance companies have very large bloated technology stacks that have been built with bolt-on features, functions, products over the years, and they're about to get crushed into their own weight. And the new environment doesn't allow for that kind of monolith to behave the way it should in an agile fashion. So, upgrading and planning for the future, half of which is just, planning that next step. I think one of the things insurance companies have done, they've started to do is build innovation teams, but they have to allow their innovation teams the power. They have to give them teeth because too often it's just a tick of the box. I've created this team over there. They talk about and create cool things, but do they really have enough influence over the IT department? The IT department's in defense mode. Any new change to the stack is going to create risk. So it has to be done properly, and there has to be a real blend of those capabilities and a new set of skills being brought in for the employees. It's something that the industry talked about every year. It's one of the top three. You ask a CEO what his priority is, it's improving technology. Now I think everyone really has to do it. And there's insurtechs left, right, and center being born every month. There's some kid in his basement right now inventing the next new insurtech. And whether it's an insurtech that's a complement to the business or whether it's an insurtech that's a competing business, I think the only way is to embrace it, acknowledge it, and build for it. Build to leverage these capabilities and recognize that these insurtechs are here to stay. And what they offer that the insurance companies need to do more of is simplify what they've done. If you look down the product list of most companies, you'll see maybe 100 different products, of which 5 are producing 70% of the revenue for the insurance company, and others have just morphed over the years, feature function additions, and made it too complex. So dialing back down, simplifying workflows, simplifying products, and then ultimately simplifying the tech stack is the way the insurance industry is going to start moving.
Great. I think simplification is a really important point, and it's a lot harder to do than it is to say. So I think we've run out of time. Gentlemen, thank you both for your thoughts today and your insights. It's been really good to hear your perspectives on 2020 and where we should be going forwards. We look forward to hearing from you again as part of the Reuters podcast. Have a great day, everybody who's listening in, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Stay safe.
Thank you.